Well, good afternoon and welcome to Comp 620 and Comp 422, Information Privacy and Security. We're talking about computer forensics today. Couple announcements. Spring registration is out there. Make sure you register early before the classes you want get filled up. I know for graduate classes, they don't fill too often, but sometimes they do. This one did. And so you want to make sure that you get the class you want. So register early. Also, if you wait past November 25th, they will charge you $50 as a late fee. And you probably want to keep the $50. Okay. Course evaluations are out there. Make sure you fill those things out. It's on Blackboard. Fill them out honestly. Do them for all your classes. They are important. I know a lot of students think nobody cares, but it does give the faculty a hint at what they're doing wrong, which is probably too late for this class, but at least if we ever teach another class, we'll know what to do right. And the administration cares a lot about them. All right, here is the schedule. Today, we're talking about computer forensics, and we have a guest speaker. On Wednesday, we'll talk about privacy, which is nice because that's one of the words in the name of the course, which we haven't really touched upon too much. AI, next week on Monday, the impact of it. And we'll have our Google visiting faculty member on Wednesday, week from next week, talking about cloud security. 2 weeks from today is the third exam in this class. And then there's Thanksgiving. Okay, that's the schedule. Question, yes. Oh, yeah. Malware question? Can we wait to Wednesday? The TAs and I are still working on the rubric for what we expect for students to answer. Whenever we grade these things, we write up what we expect, what the usual sins are and how much we'll take off for each one. And this is this is like reading an essay question. And I don't really like essay questions, but so I have to understand. Some people will pick the SAFE app. I wrote one of them. It's safe. I tried to make it look a little bit more dangerous, but it's safe. The other one, Mr. Revell, might be Dr. Revell, gave us, and yes, he thought up the assignment. I thought it was a pretty good one. We'll go over it on Wednesday. We're still in the process of grading it. All right, moving on. It's section 27.4 of the textbook. I recommend you read it. It's only 9 pages. You can do that. Okay. And if you saw from the very beginning, I had some help here on the slides. Professor McDonald at the Criminal Justice Department here at A&T gave me some information, some slides. And you can see, taking information from lots of other sources. Okay, computer forensics. It's trying to document and interpret, preserve the information you get from a computer, usually for legal evidence. Some sort of crime has occurred or something you didn't want, and you're going to go out and find out what happened, who done it. This is different than cybersecurity. We've been talking about cybersecurity for this semester. Criminal forensics is done as after the fact. Cybersecurity, we are hopefully learning how to defend our systems against cyber attack, things you want to do before you get an attack. Criminal computer forensics is looking at after something's happened, trying to figure out what exactly happened, what's the extent of the damage, and most likely, who did it, and can you provide evidence that they did it so that you can prosecute. Now, what do I know about this? Well, we will not do this as a question on Zoom today. Yeah, I did read Wikipedia, and I may have done something long ago, but that's about it. I'm not a computer forensics expert, but I can read Wikipedia best as anybody else, and I can surf the web. Okay, there have been all sorts of computer forensics activities that you may have heard. Michael Jackson, the singer, died several years ago, and they decided that it was a fault of the doctor by using all sorts of computer digital evidence against him. Several years ago, a decade or more ago, this BTK serial killer was sending stuff to the police on floppy disks. You know, it's several years ago. He was doing a floppy disk. Well, there were deleted documents on the floppy disk that they could still see the text of those deleted documents and the information. And some of the header information told you who the author was. If you write a Word document, it specifies who the author was. So they knew the author of the deleted documents. That helped them a lot. They said it was Dennis. So when they found Dennis Rader, they thought they had the man. And another decade or so ago, there was a fellow in Durham who murdered his wife for the insurance and dumped his body in the lake. They checked his computer and found out he had all sorts of maps looking at lake depth. So that was kind of damning to him. And he's off spending the rest of his life in a prison here in North Carolina. Well, computer forensics is becoming important. Dean of students in Purdue thought that about a quarter of all the disciplinary cases involve computers. I think that number is only going up. The FBI thought that about half their work involves cases with at least one computer forensics examination. People are using computers in many ways. And so law enforcement, again, increasing numbers of people, law enforcement, looking for computer forensics information because computers are becoming more and more involved. There is multiple ways you can involve computer in crime. The computer might hold data about the crime. Yeah. The computer might be stolen property. Somebody might steal the computer or a phone. When I say computer, extend that to be tablets, phones, laptops, desktops. People don't usually steal servers, but and of course, the computer can hold evidence about a crime. Somebody might be doing crimes and keeping information on their computer, and then the police grab the computer, they can find information about the crime. And as you may know from this class, there's all sorts of things you can do with your computer to commit crimes. We've covered many of them, ways to log in where you're not supposed to and do activities you should never do. And those sort of activities are against the law, and that would be involving the computer. Another favorite one was distributing copyrighted material, usually videos or music. And that's very popular. Okay, I do have a question here. Let's start with a simple one. So we'll start our polls. And everybody got a card? Yeah, new card. Anybody else need a card? Oh, great. Buttons here. No. Okay. All right. Easy question. It's easier than trying like this one. There we go. Press the button. Now we're on. All right. And all right. B is the most popular answer, or D is also popular. Online, 60% of the people thought it was D, 40% thought it was A. Well, no, sanitizing user input is not a way of getting information for the prosecution. I mean, that's a good rule to prevent many criminal crimes, but it's not, doesn't have anything for helping you out with computer forensics. Remember, computer forensics is an after the fact event. So B was the answer. Okay, let's talk about, maybe if I can get my fingers, let's talk about how you might use the computer in a crime. Again, you might be committing a crime against somebody else's computer. You might be trying to steal their information. You might be trying to access, well, my examples here, you can see just access someone else's homework, looking at it. That's trying to get to another student's computer, trying to get into my computer or the university's computer and change your grade. By the way, those are both crimes, just to let you know. Financial information, theft of personal information is becoming real popular, and the ever famous denial of service that we talked about last time. Okay, those are things you might do. Other times, sometimes computer is a tool. In other words, you're going to commit a crime that's not necessarily a computer-related crime, but you're using the computer to commit that crime. And the examples here are plagiarizing, you're copying things or sending threats, counterfeiting material. Yes, people who get their scanner out, scan the $20 bill, and then print it out on their color printer. That doesn't work. In fact, some systems have a built-in check for US currency, and they get really upset if you try to scan dollars. So I don't recommend it. Besides, it is against the law, and the Treasury Department frowns against it. Then there's computer was sort of involved, but not quite, sending email for establishing dates and times. When was something done? And of course, you might be storing information about it. Okay, most common use of computer forensics is for law enforcement. If you do something nasty, the cops are going to come out, check your computer, particularly if you did a computer-oriented crime. And even any of the other categories you mentioned, they will seize your computer. Employee policies. When you are an employee, the computers that you use are the property of the company, and they have the right to look at everything that you're doing while you're there. Even if you're off sending emails to your spouse, they have the right to look at everything. By the way, you can get email encryption. We've talked about that. If you're going to send emails to your spouse, encrypt it. Okay. And sometimes employees are not following the rules. Some employees are embezzling from the company or doing things against their inside tax to the company, and the company can find out information about that employee. Or if they just think this guy's a bum and they want to get rid of him, they can try to look and see what has he been doing. Sometimes they can use the computer forensics techniques for things that are not looking for criminal activity or bad things. Sometimes if data is destroyed, they can use some of the computer forensics issues to go out and find things that were deleted and get them back. And in order to do it well, you have to have an understanding of how the system works. You can learn a lot about that. Sometimes it's cyber forensics, digital forensics, computer forensics. Anyway, it's gathering data for evidence in a criminal case, or if not a criminal case, for an employee or some other related activity. And not only law enforcement, that there are private investigators that use this to go out and search, find out things, and do this for criminal or employee investigations. They need to gather evidence. We'll talk a little bit later. Evidence is key. You can't just say, I think they did this. You have to have proof. The courts in America require that the prosecution prove that you are guilty, and otherwise you're innocent until proven guilty. So they have to prove that you committed the crime. So you need evidence for that. So you have to make sure you always follow the legal rules for evidence. We'll talk a little bit more about that. And if you don't follow the rules, the evidence can be dismissed. That means the judge can say, no, you cannot present that evidence, and that may really hurt your case against the defendant. There are digital forensics analysis. People who do this analysis looks at the information, find cybercrime, fraud, other activities. And there are also special tools and software and equipment that you can use. I'll talk about that briefly today. And again, as I mentioned, cybersecurity is there to prevent the crimes from happening. Computer forensics is there to find out what happened after the crime has occurred. Why is it important? Because more and more people are using computers in their crime. Well, computers are all over the place. I suppose if you were going to poison your spouse, you could ask ChatGPT how to do it. That would give it away. I don't know if ChatGPT will tell you, but you have to ask it carefully. Don't do that, by the way. I didn't intend for you to ever poison your spouse. That would be bad. The capital B. But yes, more and more people are using computers in the criminal activities. So if you're out there trying to figure out what you want to do, if you're doing computer forensics, if you are in the business and you have to go out and find out, and frequently you might start off, say, at systems management or hired to do computer cybersecurity, but when something happens, they turn around and say, you figure out what happened. And suddenly now you're a computer forensics expert, or at least they think you are, and you better become one quick. And so you're there to gather evidence to prove that a suspect is prove it. Well, again, you want to be able to prove that they're guilty or that they're innocent. So you do several ways. Again, look at the suspect's computer and look at any evidence from other computers. Sometimes if they access a server, you might be able to look at the server information or the email server or their phone system. There's lots of other places where you can find data besides their computer. Scott Sander, who provided a lot of the information for this, has the 3 A's. You need to acquire the evidence without altering or damaging the original. We'll talk a little bit more about that. Yes, it's very important that you don't mess the system. Authenticate it. You have to make sure it's true and honest, and then analyze it without modifying it. Notice multiple occasions they say, don't modify the original data. That's bad. If you start modifying things, then they say, well, you changed it. How do we know that it was that way before? Or it has to be that way because in the United States, both sides get to look at all the evidence. I mean, in the TV court dramas, somebody always surprises somebody with some evidence. You can't do that. No, both sides have access to all the evidence, the defendant and the prosecution. So you have to be able to show, here it is. We haven't changed it. So basically, secure, you have to secure collection. It's collect it so it's safe to identify, make sure you identify who the suspect is, who did this, examine the data, make sure they get the details, find out exactly what they did, where they did it, when they did it. Then you have to be able to present the information so that you can tell people, particularly people who are not computer experts, what happened. And of course, it has to all apply to the law of the country, your state, your local area. If they have laws against computers activities, then you have to make sure you are following all the laws or applying your investigation to those laws. Okay, here is some of the process. You need to go through several steps. First one is find identification. What are you going to look for? What do you want to find? And again, preservation. Don't change it. Collect it. You gotta get all the information you can, and then do the examine it. Find out what do you have. You should often start with lots and lots of data. Only very little of it is actually pertinent to what you want, and you have to filter through it and find out what happened, what went on. Then analysis, looking at it again. Presentation and decision. Decision is important. Do you have data that proves this person is guilty? Or does it appear that they're innocent? Don't start by thinking, oh, they're guilty. You have to go out, say, I'm going to find out who did it. And then if you think you found it, get evidence that they did it. But be open to the fact that maybe they didn't do it. Chain of custody is an important concept in criminal cases. You have to keep the information, the evidence you have, secure so that nobody else might have changed it. There are all sorts of effective processes in the legal system. And I know several of the students in this class are in the criminal justice department and probably know much, much more about this than I do. They better, or else they shouldn't get a degree in that field. But you have to keep it secure for the whole life of the case. And things you want to know, well, and people will need to know who collected it. When you collected, who collected this? Did you? Did somebody else? Where and how did you get possession of it? How is it stored and how is it protected? And who took it out of storage and why? Okay, again, all sorts of things, all sorts of parts of the system you may look at. There are networks. You have network logs, network traces. You can look at that, find out where things are going. Media. Yes, not only the regular disk drives on the system, if people use local disks or people use removable disks, that makes the job a lot easier because removable disks are usually a lot smaller and they probably use the removable disk for that purpose. It doesn't, you don't have to look at lots of stuff. You can just look at that removable disk. And you can look at you can look at the slack space. That is spaces on the disk that in theory do not hold any files, but may in fact hold lots of information. And steganography, we talked about steganography in the class, the art of hiding information. They may do that. Code analysis, reverse engineering, that is looking at an executable and figuring out what does it do. A malicious code review, finding out what again it is. We'll talk more about reverse engineering later in the course, and then exploit review. So we have another question. I can find it. Nobody said immerse it in liquid nitrogen. I'm bad. Oh, yes. Somebody online said immerse it in liquid nitrogen. Yes, we'll trace you down and find out who said that. But no. Now, the reason for that is an academic did prove that if you immerse the RAM in liquid nitrogen after you turn off the computer, they can still get data from it. Not likely. But, if you're there with the chips and you turn off the computer and you immerse the chip in liquid nitrogen, it's an interesting experiment, but it's not of any value in the real world. Okay. Yes. A, make a copy of the hard drive. That is it. That is the number one item. That's where you start. So everybody got that. Okay, I have 5 rules of evidence. It has to be admissible. That is, it has to be following the rules of the courts and the laws. It has to be authentic. It has to be real. You can't just make this stuff up. You've got to have information that you've acquired from the activity that was done. It has to be complete. That is, you can't just say, I know he's guilty, and that's all I'm going to look for. You have to look for all the information relating to the event. And don't give up the idea that that person might be innocent. So you have to look at everything. Reliable. Of course, it has to be reliable because it may be important. If you're doing this for a company, the guy's probably going to get fired. If you're doing it legally, somebody might go to jail. That's a very important decision. And it has to be believable. The jury has to understand it. They have to not only do you have to believe it to be true, but you have to be able to explain to people who are not computer experts that this is true. So admissible. I think I have all of these. Basic rules, measures of validity of importance. Must be acquired in a way that is acceptable to the courts. And you can make all sorts of errors in how you acquire it. You can make errors in how you store it. And doing these may mean that the evidence will be thrown out by the courts, and that can really hurt your prosecution. Generally, we assume that people doing the analysis are on the prosecution, although that's not necessarily true. Somebody who's been accused of doing some crime may have computer forensics experts looking at the information to try to prove that they didn't do the crime. And authentic, it has to be real. You can't just make this up. You have to get the information. It has to be relevant to yes, it has to be relevant. Just because somebody did something that's not part of the crime, it might even be a nasty thing to do, that doesn't mean they were guilty of the crime you're investigating. They have to find evidence relating to that particular crime. And again, it has to be complete. You can't leave out pieces. You have to provide all the evidence. And I've mentioned several times, you have to show all perspectives. So, because if you don't show all the information, people may get a slanted view, and it's your job to to present a true and honest view of the information. Reliable. Of course, it has to be reliable. Make sure that you've done it in a way the evidence you got is correct. You have to go out there and make sure what you found is truly usable. I mean, it's not just junk that you thought, well, it kind of looks like the prop. Nope, you have to find information that's exactly what. And believable. If it's not believable, it's no good. If you can't make other people believe it, particularly a jury, because at some point, if it's a criminal case, they go to a jury or before a judge, and they're probably not computer experts, and you're going to have to make them understand how this works. And we've got an easy question because it's true and false. How wrong can you be? Okay. A is very popular. There's a couple C's and D's. We won't go into that. But yes, okay. A lot of people were saying A. Too bad that A is wrong. No, the answer is B, false. The act of logging into a computer opens and starts many, many programs and creates lots of files. Logging in, you ever wonder why it takes a while before your computer catches up? Whenever I log in, I turn on the task manager on Windows. There's an equivalent thing in your Apple computer to look at what's going on. The computer is often very busy. It takes 30 seconds of my computer before it kind of quiets down. I try not to do anything until CPU activity gets below 10%. It's creating all sorts of files. So no, cannot log in. If you log in, you will, again, damage the evidence. You'll destroy the reliability of the evidence. Okay, so things to do. Minimize handling of the original data. Yes, only touch the original information enough to copy it. Don't do anything else with it. Look at all the logs. Count for any changes. Again, look at the 5 rules of evidence that I mentioned before. Don't do things that you don't know what you're doing. If you don't know what you're doing, you find somebody who does know or figure it out. Don't go beyond what you can do, because they're going to ask you how you know this. And if you don't really know what you're doing, it's going to show. And of course, you have to be able to do this. You have to have permission to look at this. Now, if it's a criminal case, you're seizing somebody's computer, that requires a warrant. If you are doing it in the industry, they'll have to have, somebody's going to have to give you written permission to do this. So make sure you get written permission. And you want to capture an image of the system, as accurate as possible. Always be ready to tell people what you did. Ensure your actions are repeatable. Don't mess up the original data. And so other people can do the same thing. The defense should be able to repeat your actions and get the same results. You want to work fast because you want to find an answer. From volatile to persistent, some data is not going to last real long. Don't run anything because anytime you run, and of course, document everything that you are doing. There are all sorts of laws out there protecting privacy information. I'll talk more about these on Wednesday when I talk about privacy. In fact, yeah, I'll talk more about this on Wednesday. Stay tuned for Wednesday. And the Fourth Amendment of the U.S. Constitution protects unreasonable search and seizures, which means you cannot go out and look at somebody's computer unless you have a warrant to do so. Fifth Amendment in self-incrimination, that just basically means that they can't force you to answer questions you can only answer if you voluntarily do so. and there are laws against monitoring communications. We'll talk about all that on Wednesday. Okay, one of the first things you want to do is create an image of the disk. In other words, the best thing to do is when you get a computer, assuming the computer's turned off, is you want to copy the disk. Take the disk out of the computer. I had one of these little devices. You can plug that into it, and then it has a USB port, and you can plug the USB port into your computer, and you can copy. So you get another disk that is the same size. It usually helps to get another disk that's identical to the original one. Copy it byte for byte. Not just copy all the files, copy every byte over. So you have sometimes there's information that's volatile. What's in the you know about how computers work. You're there, computer's running a program. There's stuff for the cache, there's stuff from the registers. Those things are going to disappear. There are tables out there that are going to change. System memory, the RAM. As soon as you turn that computer off, all that goes away. There are temporary files that go away, and there's data on the disk that's not part of files. Again, examining a live image changes the state of the data. You need to protect that so we could don't change anything. Right? One of the big rules is you only get one chance to do it right. It was a popular issue that you could go out and get deleted files. When the operating system creates a file, it goes out and gets available blocks off the disk, puts the file in there, and in the table of contents for that file, it keeps a list of all the blocks that make up that file. And then when you delete the file, it takes that list of blocks and puts it on the free list. So those blocks are available when somebody creates another file. Now, on the old rotating magnetic disks, the data was out there. It doesn't get overwritten. It takes too much processing disk time to overwrite these things. So that's a performance hit. So whenever you delete a file, it simply puts those blocks on the available list, and you'll write on them again. And since it doesn't show you the data, well, let's say it doesn't show you the data until you read it. Actually, yes, an old hacker trick is to go out there, get a big file, and start reading it before you wrote it. In some systems, you can get away with that. You start by writing a very high address. You do a direct access, and instead of writing it sequentially, you write to a particular address at a high address. Then the system says, oh, okay. It allocates all the other lower addresses for you. You go out and read it. It doesn't care because you go past the highest address you wrote. And you can read all this information. But yes, so it used to be they said, well, okay, you can search the available disk blocks. There are all sorts of tools out there that will look at blocks on the available list, blocks that are not allocated to files, and try to put them back together to figure out what file they might have had, what was in that file. And you can go out and see what files were deleted. Unfortunately, if you use a solid-state disk, solid-state disks, when you write to a solid-state disk, before you write to that block, it has to be flashed. They call it flash memory. There's a reason for it, flash memory. The disk block has to be erased. It's erased in a block. You can then write individual bytes or chunks to it, actually blocks to it, but the blocks have to be erased in a flash. That takes some measurable time. I mean, it's not talking nanoseconds here, but it takes time. And so typically the system will go out and erase them when it's idle. There's a trim function, which you should probably turn on your disk because it helps performance. Trim function goes out there, and when the disk is idle and you have deleted something, then it'll go out and flash erase those blocks. So when it wants to write the blocks, they'll be available. And it does it again when it's idle. So since it erased them, going back and reading them afterwards isn't going to do any good because they're all blank. Because that's flash. Now, as I mentioned, you can put things on the disk, places that are not files. If you look at all the files, you can have hidden files. Both Mac OS and Windows has the concept of a hidden file or a system file, but you can see those. You go up in the file manager, look at view, go down, you can show me the hidden files, and it will. So you can see those if you want. But there are other places you can hide files. You can not only have system or hidden files, you can hide data that's not in a directory that you can see, or you can hide data in the places that aren't files. In other words, there are in places that have been allocated, you can put data there. Hard drives sometimes have bad spots. In the manufacturer of the drive, if you have a terabyte drive, a billion bytes, a couple of those bytes might not work. I mean, that means if it's 99.999% correct, that still means there's a piece out there that isn't going to work. Yeah, that happens all the time. So when they format a drive, it finds pieces that aren't working and it unallocates. It allocates those as bad blocks. So the system will never put a file on top of them. That way, so you buy a drive, goes out there, formats it, finds the bad spots, marks them as bad, and then never puts a file in there. No problem. You know, usually only happens to a couple blocks out of billions of blocks you have to worry about, so it's not a problem. Sometimes, though, the people can hide things as bad blocks. They can well, normal users can't, but the operating system can specify that a block is bad, and then you can store information in that block. And nobody will look at it. It won't be overwritten because thinking it's a bad block, the operating system won't use it. So when you are starting to investigate, you want to make a duplicate. The first thing, again, you do is copy the disk, because then you can analyze, look at it, and typically you want to make 2 copies. So you have a copy that you can work with, and in case that gets messed up by something you're doing, go back and get a copy of your copy and look at that. That way, you haven't damaged the original evidence at all. You're, again, looking at a copy and looking at what you can find from that. Now, you want to copy everything on the disk because they may hide information that's not files. You just want to you don't want to use the system that's going to copy all the files. You want to copy every byte on the disk because there may be information, again, in a place that wasn't. In fact, if you can, you should copy the bad spots, the spots that the system is marked as. It may not, if it's really bad, it may have an error reading it, but that's okay. And so you want to look at the areas that are not used. And again, there are other system areas. You have the swap file, you've got page files. Those may be holding information. So you want basically a physical image, not just the list of the files. You want everything. And as I mentioned, make 2 copies. So there's the original computer, which you don't, after you make a copy, you don't touch. You then use your copy that you're looking at. Another one is your backup, in case you need to check. And you analyze your working copy and the library copies back there in case you screw up your working copy. Yes, you want to start with a new drive that has nothing on it. So nobody can say, well, it was there when you started. Nope. I started with a blank drive. Oh, another clicker question, see if you're paying attention. Oh, okay. Fingers aren't working correctly today. Oh, that was definitely not the right button to press. All right. Oh, please stand by. Oh. Press the right button eventually. All right. Yes, I think somebody was talking about monkeys on a computer, honestly, reproducing Shakespeare. Infinite time to do it, but not in the lifespan of them. You should be able to recover deleted files in most computers. Everybody went true. Oh, have you been paying attention? No, the answer is false. Fooled you. No, why? Because almost all modern computers use solid state disks. Everybody's buying, you try to go out and buy a laptop that has a rotating magnetic drive on it. No, they don't do that anymore. Everybody uses the solid state drives because they're so much faster, they're so much more resilient. And if you have a rotating magnetic disk and you kind of drop your laptop while it's running, ooh, that's bad. Solid state disk doesn't care. Well, I mean, depending on how high you drop it, but yeah. So most computers, so if you delete a file, it will shortly thereafter delete or flash all the unused space, and the deleted files will be gone. Okay, got that? Everybody understands what's happening there? Okay. Phones, everybody's using their phones. Phone company keeps logs. Question? Nope. Just phone company keeps logs of all the calls you make, all the calls you receive, when they were, who called you, who called when, all this sort of stuff. And they know where you were in the world. So that's also the information that's out there. So the law enforcement go out to the phone company and get all this information. And of course, you have contact lists. If they get your phone and look at your contact list, it's a list of suspects. And there are photos. Typically, most of the photo formats, JPEG and others, keep the time and date and GPS coordinates of where the picture was taken, particularly if you use your phone. And if you edit it a little bit in your computer, it might lose some of that. But generally, that information is on your phone. You can find out exactly where the camera was when you press the click. I think I mentioned this, if all the data disappears, sometimes you have a live computer and you want to get it into the lab. You try to, that can be, yes, because remember, you turn it off, it's going to lose all that information. So sometimes you have to connect it to a UPS. That's not a transport company. That's an uninterruptible power supply. It's big battery systems will keep going. And a mouse jiggler, yes, a mouse jiggler moves the mouse so the system doesn't go to sleep. Logs, there's all sorts of information in logs. Computers keep track of all sorts of things. How much it keeps track of is a configurable thing. Usually it keeps track of what programs you ran, what's going on. You go out to Microsoft Windows, look at the logs. There's all sorts of garbage it's collecting, so it needs all sorts of things. And particularly errors or events that might be related to malicious or suspicious activities. And sometimes you look at this log and that log, you can put things all together. All right, the guy with an old gray beard here is going to tell you, long ago, far away, I was manager of systems programming on a mainframe, big computers. And everybody had terminals. And somebody found the root password of our system and thought they'd get nasty, deleted some files, caused a denial of service attack. Well, we started looking in the log. We knew the account that did it because we saw the account that accessed that file in a way that would delete it. But we knew that that wasn't the person who did it. That person was someplace else when it happened. They had stolen that person's password. And of course, the attacker didn't want to be too stupid. They weren't going to use their own account. They used somebody else's account. But what they didn't pay attention to, this is back in the days, this is long ago, this is dial-up lines where you dialed up. So they dialed up and used their computer, their account, and then logged off, did not disconnect the computer and logged on with the stolen account. We could figure that out because we knew what account it was. You could go back to the logs in the system, find out when they're logged on, go back to the network logs, find out when that network connection was. Oh, look, there's somebody else that did a network connection on the same line. So that was them. And we brought them to the Dean of Students, and the Dean of Students expelled them. Yeah, I just remember the Dean of Students. Go out and talk to the secretary, and she'll help you withdraw. Now, yes, we have a question. Oh, I think he was a jerk myself. I don't know. It was just a prank. I believe the student thought it was a prank. The dean did not consider it a prank. Dean considered it a malicious activity and just expelled him on the spot. That was, yes. Dean didn't take anything. He had a baseball bat behind his desk. And it wasn't to play a game. Okay. So, again, talking about Windows logs types, there are errors. What's different categories of log information? Errors, those are logged when something breaks. Warnings, something funny happened here. Information is this has happened. I started this program. This is done. You go out, there's all sorts of, a lot of things. Think they ought to print something to the log all the time. And then security audits, something goes correct. And then failure audits, when something was found that shouldn't happen. Now, there are tools that go out there to try to make it more difficult for forensics analysis. There are things that go out there, they can change the logs. You can delete the logs. You can edit the logs so it doesn't say what you want it to say. You can change timestamps of files. There are simple tools. There's in Unix world, there's something called touch. You go touch, give it a file name, and it changes the date to now, the last update. And that's useful at times, but it kind of messes up the forensics. And so, but of course, sometimes the use of these anti-forensics tools leaves a trace which you can follow and say, this person did this, which kind of looks like a guilty thing. I mean, there are all sorts of associations for people, for computer forensics or professionals, and you can join these. There's a IACIS and several certifications. You can get certifications from these organizations. You study this material, take the exams, and you can get certified. And then once you're certified, there's all sorts of careers you can get. You can investigators, analysis technicians, different levels. You have to know different amounts. One might probably start as a technician, learn more to become an analysis, and then go forth to become an investigator. And they pay these people pretty well. Okay, that's all for computer forensics. Any questions about that? Reminder that don't run away, though. We have, I guess, speaker in just a minute. Registration started. Already got there and register. Course evaluations are coming up. Make sure you do that. They are important. Do them for all your classes. And this is the schedule coming up. We just did this. We have a guest speaker in just a minute. Talk about privacy on Wednesday. Next week from today, we'll talk about artificial intelligence impact on computer cybersecurity, how it helps us defend systems, and how they might use it to attack. Well, next week, Wednesday, we'll have our Google guest professor here talk about cloud security. And then 2 weeks from today is the third exam. And just about the third exam, do the exam like last time. I will give you a summary of your scores after that. And most importantly, I'll be telling you then whether you are or not exempt from the final exam, which I'll talk much more about as we get closer and not until then. Okay, so I'd like to introduce Serena Tagridge. She's the CEO of Tagridge Technologies, and she's going to talk about that as a startup cyber firm. So let me just close this, get to the next set of slides. Okay, here is Serena.
Hi, I'm Serena, and I started my own company, Tagridge Technologies. You can scan the QR code if you want to see our website or Google it. So a little bit about me. I started out in the military with as an IT specialist. I highly recommend, great job security. Then I was an admin at a Resolute Building Company. Small companies, really great. You learn a lot because you wear every hat. And just relating it a little bit back to cyber forensics, I did do a lot of e-discovery there because they were always getting sued. Construction companies are always getting sued. So we partnered with lawyers a lot for that e-discovery, which was very interesting. Then I worked as a deputy director at CDIC, which is Cyber Defense and Intelligence Center. That was a startup. And all startups have a lot of potential, but not all of them last. This one didn't. We tracked cyber crimes on the dark web and reported it to the police because the police don't really have that many resources or people who know how to do this stuff. We partnered with the Deputy of California because they really were pushing to prosecute for cyber crimes. And we got in deep. We had some gang related stuff that we discovered in Florida and in Texas. And there was a lot of CSAM, which is crimes against children. We found a lot of that stuff, and the organization ended up having to shut down because we found so much stuff, people were getting death threats. And then I started my own company, Tagridge Technologies. So Tagridge Technologies, our services are IT consulting, GRC, and penetration testing. A little bit more about that in depth. GRC, there's not a lot of dedicated, or I'll just explain. So GRC helps organizations manage cybersecurity risks and regulatory compliance like GDPR, CCPA, HIPAA, PCI DSS. So there's not a lot of frameworks for that. And so my framework that I follow is kind of a hodgepodge of all of those COSO, ERM, ITIL, and COBIT. Yeah, because there's no set framework to follow that off of. Our project flow, so whenever we start a project, we go with client engagement. I have this big spreadsheet, and each line has its own major category. And then within that, you have subtasks and categories within that. And then it's a giant flow chart. And then it goes into each task has a document that you follow the instructions. It's an SOP. So our projects go with client engagement, just how we interact with the clients, risk assessment, deciding what applies to them, how much they're at risk with, the compliance audit, how well they're doing it, and what needs to be fixed, fixing those, the remediation, and then developing policies to fix those or policies to say how they should be doing things, and then training the employees on that. Yeah, and then mainly, oh, sorry, I forget, not speaking to the class, I'm speaking to the camera. Policy creation, that is, there's most of the projects that I've worked with GRC, people want policy creation. They say, I don't want everything, I just want the policy creation. So here's a list of just some basic policies that we've created for companies. Incident responses, information security, the acceptable use. And then our service penetration testing. We follow the P-TEST framework, which is that is for penetration testing. And it is wonderful. It tells you how to do everything. It has a sheet that says exactly how to technically do it also. It's got the framework and then it's got the technical sheet. I love that one. A lot of looking into it, most people would think use the NIST framework, but that is just an overall framework that really it's not specifically for penetration testing. So it would have had to be a hodgepodge. We use a black box methodology. So we're assuming that most people don't understand they don't understand penetration testing. They can't give you the information. So we just assume, we start from the outside and assume that we're just trying to get in. And the three important documents that are very, very important for penetration testing: rules of engagement, statement of work, and the authorization letter. So the rules of engagement are how we do it, a technical overview. The statement of work is exactly what we will do for the client. So communicating with them, like, what do you want? What are you trying to achieve with this penetration test? And saying that in a technical way for them. And then the authorization letter, just making sure that we have the permission, they understand what we're doing, kind of reiterating the rules of engagement and the statement of work, and who will be doing what work. And then IT consulting, that was just to diversify our offering so that it's not because our two other offerings, penetration testing and GRC, are both for companies. So we wanted to diversify our offering so that it would be applicable to everyone. So just IT support for everyone. So keys to starting a company. The company for me, so it's very low startup for cybersecurity. I spend about $4K a year to keep this running because we're completely remote. We don't have an office. There's a lot of open source tools available that we know how to set up. So our cost is a lot less than other companies would be because we know how to get the free software. Don't quit your job until you have at least a year of savings built up. Like, quit at the last moment, because no matter how great of an idea you think you have, it takes a while to build. It takes a while to actually start turning a profit. And build a client base before you completely switch over. Don't just think, oh, I got my first client, it's going to be a snowball effect from here. It's not. Company structure. So I'm an LLC. Only after you have a good client base and are making like 30K a year would I recommend filing your LLC. I filed after my first client. I was excited. I thought it'd be a snowball. I quit my job, filed, I was ready. But it's a slow process. So make sure, and when you file that LLC, the state rules are more applicable to you. So us being so close to the border of Virginia and us being a remote service, I was stuck to North Carolina because I was an LLC, because I said, I am going to only do business in this. You have to file, what's it called? Foreign entities in other states that you want to advertise if you make more than $300 or if you're actively advertising. So that's why I recommend filing your LLC after you have like a good base and you're making money, because you're not boxing yourself in as much. And the only benefit with an LLC is the liability coverage, which you can do with insurance, which is like $30 a month. It's actually really, really cheap. Actually, I think it's $30 a year. It's actually really, really cheap. A lot of people file because they think they have tax benefits if they file an LLC early, but no, you're still a pass-through entity. As an LLC, you get the same tax benefits as you would a sole proprietor. And as that sole proprietor or LLC, you have all those home office space, devices used, driving, gas, meals that you can do as a write-off. And again, benefits of the LLC is the EIN and the liability coverage. Here are just some really good tools that I recommend if anyone is interested in starting their own business. Google Voice, it's a free phone. You can contact clients. You don't need to give out your own. That way you can differentiate between your business and your personal. WordPress is very cheap. It's $4 a month. I went with a different website and now I'm stuck in a year-long contract when I wish I would have done WordPress first. And you can get your domain name through that WordPress. Zoho email, it's 5 free domains for free. So you can get a business email for free, 5 different emails with that one domain. Bluevine, free banking, no ACH payments. So it's easy to pay contractors, keep track of that. Start, even as a sole prop, before you file everything, start keeping track of things in books. I recommend Zoho Books because you can send out invoices, payment links. You can link that with your PayPal, and PayPal has the lowest payment percentage that it takes. I know a lot of people are familiar with Squarespace, or not Squarespace, Square. It takes more of a percentage than PayPal does. Buffer is a free social media manager so that you can manage 3 different social medias. You just schedule it once and you're set for a week. Saves a lot of time. Then Canva, professional templates, and vTiger for the CRM. So do y'all know what a CRM is? Client relations management. So anytime you interact with a client, anytime you reach out, you want to track it because it helps you with your statistics. Like, this is how much I did this year. If I bring on another person, how much more can I do next year? If I, where is my choke point basically on your client outreach? You can analyze your entire client outreach. It's very important. Some free resources for starting. So the Small Business Association, they have like meetings, courses, local resources, and they have within those meetings you can network. It's great. And they partner with SCORE, who are mentors that if you're whatever industry you're interested in, they have a mentor for it who is a CEO, started their own company. They will have a 40-minute, 30-minute call with you and talk you through exactly your brainchild. They have legal consulting. So if you're saying, I want to do this, but I'm just not sure, is that legal? They can help you with it. They'll help you with the documentation for liability, everything. Walk you through government contracting, your sales strategy and brand. They have mentors for everything. It's amazing. And then surprisingly, your library card. They have a business resources that are very free, and they have Gale legal forms, which have, those in the GRC that I mentioned, all those policies we create. They have the cookie cutter for everything, and it's lawyer approved forms. And then they have a business plan builder, Gale business plan builder, and your brainchild, you type in the information, and then you can download it, and it's a professional business plan with a financial analysis. It does all the math for you. So about my business, starting out, you really have to be client-oriented. Not just starting out. I think a whole business model, you have to be client-oriented or your clients won't buy in. So business impact and focus. I think everything comes down to your clients want the cheap, or your clients want something that helps them. So their main priorities for their business is money and reputation. So how can you help them save money? How can you help with their reputation? With GRC, we help with their reputation by making sure that they're compliant. They're not breaking rules. If they have a data leak, how does that affect them as a company? It ruins their reputation and they lose money because clients don't want them. And then also a lot of cyber insurance, they have, you can save them money by saying, yes, we did a penetration test. Yes, our clients are trained yearly. Yes, we had all this analysis done. Because those are questions actually asked on cyber insurance, and it saves them a lot of money if they do it. People want quality work, instant fixes, and they want it for free now. So I think with my company, I've tried to be as close to that as I can. I've tried to lower my prices, price matching, reach out as quickly as you can. With cybersecurity, it's kind of hard to show. Actually, I'll get into that later. I have a slide for that later. Why we focus on healthcare and nonprofits? Because healthcare is regulated and nonprofits are, as a startup, they are willing to compromise on the reputation to save on money for them because we're giving them such a good deal to build our reputation. So starting out, you really have to just keep pleasing the client as much as you can. And this is what I said I'd get into earlier. So look busy. Cybersecurity is really on the back end of things. So you have to look busier, show them products, give them something that they can see and are happy about. Because if you fix things and you're quiet, they won't know. You need to be loud about what you do. You need to almost show off. Make them think, wow, we got this for such a great deal. It's helped our reputation. We saved all the money. And look at all of what they did just for this little price. They want to show other people, and that'll help spread the word about your company. And focusing on how it impacts their businesses, you can kind of target what has happened to you in the past. Why do you need cybersecurity? Why is it so essential? Because people know it's essential, but it's not a priority for them because they say, I'll get to that later. Accounting is a priority for me right now. payroll for the clients selling my products is a priority, but cybersecurity, not so much. But if you say you remind them about incidents that happened to them, they're much more likely to want to buy in. So here's some just examples of some of the clients that I've had or clients that I've worked with or had cyber incidents. So the PCC, the Pregnancy Care Center, they clicked on a link, their accountant did, and they're a pregnancy care center, so they have PHI. They got compromised and they lost all of their money. Not all, but probably around $5,000. CDIC, that was the Cyber Defense and Intelligence Center where we worked in the dark web to find scams and cyber crimes. Everyone, people who were scammed, they would submit links and say, I got scammed with this, can you track them down? One of the cases that we had was a job application. Somebody applied for a job, gave them all their information, signed up, and then the job was like, yeah, we'll pay for all your office supplies, just cash this check. And they were laundering money that way. They would give them money and then they said, oh, well, you need to refund us this. And then it was a money laundering thing. So if it's too good to be true, it is. So yeah, people are the weak spot point of security. If you can really point that out and look at their incidents, show how you can help their reputation, save them money, because they lose a lot with compromises. And then say, yes, we'll train, give them some training resources. They're much likely to want to buy in. Just a little bit about what companies look for when they're hiring. I know that was covered by the other person who gave a speech last time. But I